So at the moment, everybody's talking about AI, but people are also talking a great deal about longevity. They're really asking themselves, what happens when we live longer? Does it mean we have to work longer? If I have to work into my 70s, what does that look like? What does it mean for pensions? The person I was talking to in Japan just now was the pension regulator of Japan. What does it mean for pensions? So these are all conversations that people are having all the time. We have to keep asking ourselves, is the way I'm thinking right for how the world is developing? It's a constant question of self-reflection. And in my new book, which comes out in September, that really asks again the question, how do I think about my life when I could live to 100? So we're reevaluating what it is to be 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, and 80. And we're also reevaluating what organizations have to do to make sure they don't have misconceptions. A misconception could be, well, somebody at 50 isn't really able to work full time, or somebody at 60, or even somebody at 70. And I think we're realizing actually people can work at all sorts of ages, doing all sorts of jobs. So we have to sort of let go of some of our preconceptions about what it is to age. So what we said I wrote with an economist, and what we said is the 3-stage life: full-time education, full-time work, full-time retirement, just wasn't going to work. Because if you now say, I'm going to work until I'm 70, then that's a long working period. And even then, if you only work till 60 and live to 90, it's a lot of time not working. How are you going to finance it? But also, do you want to be retired for so long? So we began to realize that what had to take its place is what we call the multi-stage life. And the multi-stage life is an idea that, you add more stages. So, for example, you add a time, you basically redistribute education and the retirement through your life. So you go back to education rather than doing it once. And similarly with retirement, you take some of the time and move it back to having sabbaticals or going on adventures or traveling to South India as I did in the last few weeks. So it's something that's much more flexible, and that's really what people want. Companies have to think about flexibility. So, how do you give people more flexibility? You have to think about giving people time off to travel. You have to think about employing people until they're 70 if they want to do that. But at the same time, and this is really what I'm working on now, it also means that individuals have got to take more responsibility for their own development and for their own sort of growth, as it were. So, that combination of what do the organization need to do, but also what do individuals need to do, that's a very important combination. It's a lot about also how does the individual develop? What does it take to learn how to live a 100-year life? And this is what my new book is about, called Living the 100-Year Life. And it's particularly addressed to individuals, saying, look, you have to learn how to live a 100-year life. And what I'm saying in the book is you have to learn how to stay productive, but also how to nurture yourself. And that combination of staying productive and nurturing yourself, you have to do it in a way that you're actually thinking about it. You can't just expect it to happen. You have to ask yourself, what do I have to do now to be more productive, to learn things? You asked, one of the questions you're asking is about mastery, and mastery is one of the productive threads as I call it. One of the ways to stay productive is to learn something deeply. So organizations have to change, but individuals also have to change. You have to ask yourself, who am I at my stage in my life? Where am I? And what do I need to do now to make sure I live a long, productive life, both in terms of short-term actions, but also in terms of what I call promises to my future self. What would I want my future self to be and to have? So, for example, one of the nurture aspects is about friendship, and we know that people who have friends at work are happier, more likely to stay, more content than people who don't have friends at work. And that's something you can promise your future self. You can say at the age of 30, I promise to have a friend when I'm 50, so I can have this long friendship. So these are sort of promises that we can make to our future selves. There's a tension always between being productive and nurturing yourself, looking after your family, staying healthy, staying calm, having good relationships. But that tension can't ever be resolved. You can never sort of balance it and say, oh, I've got a perfect balance. All you can do is to work with it, and realize that there's going to be times in your life, which is why I've used the concept of the threads and weaving a life. There's going to be times in your life you do really focus on being productive, that when you do too much of that, you weaken the other side of your life. So it really requires a lot more thought on behalf of the individual about where am I now? What is it that I can do now?